Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. I'm Dr. Yamonja Smalls, Director of Professional Development. We welcome you to today's Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration's Community Meeting Series with Deputy Secretary Marlena Hutchinson. Unfortunately, our go-to meeting platform is experiencing technical difficulties, and none of us are going to be able to use our cameras. We will not be able to enable our cameras today. That said, we're still going to be able to move forward. On the panel today, we have Deputy Secretary Marlena Hutchinson, Robert Wife, our Chief Operating Officer, Rhonda Workman, our Director of Federal Programs, Will Payne, our Chief of Staff, and Antoine Williams Jr., our Director of Programs. Before we begin our meeting, we also want to ensure civility for all of our meetings. The free expression of diverse viewpoints is an essential value for our group. This freedom comes with the responsibility to engage respectfully, which involves treating one another with dignity and with respect in good faith. Uncivil behavior, disruptive conduct, abusive language, threats, or harassment will not be tolerated and may lead to being excused from the meeting. Thank you for helping us to keep this meeting productive and comfortable for everyone. Again, all attendees are in listen-only mode, and your mic and unfortunately your camera will be turned off throughout this meeting. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them in the question box here, and later in the meeting, the team will respond to questions that you submitted by the questions that were submitted by this community. There will be a time where you will also be able to ask some of your questions directly. If you would like to have closed captions enabled on your personal device, there's a box at the top of your screen or in the side panel that has two CCs in it. If you click that box, you will be able to see the closed captioning on your computer. And now I'd like to turn this meeting over to our Deputy Secretary, Marlena Hutchinson. Good morning, Marlena.
Good morning, Dr. Smalls. Thank you. Welcome, and thank you to the honorable members from the Governor's Office, the honorable members from the legislature, state agency representatives, participants, parents, family members, providers, and community partners. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide, please. Before we move into our agenda, I want to take a moment to formally introduce Mr. Antoine Williams Jr., DDA's new Director of Programs. While he joined us in November of last year, this is our first opportunity to welcome him publicly. Antoine comes to us with extensive experience in operations management, customer service, and health services as a registered nurse. He also has a rich background in clinical leadership and program development, working with people with individual, intellectual, and developmental disabilities. We are so glad that Antoine is a member of our hardworking team. Next slide, please. For our community meeting today, we will start with sharing some of our living our best lives success stories. We often navigate through these challenges together and realize that this is hard for many. We also want to celebrate the many lives that have been so positively impacted by the realized Medicaid waiver services and collaboration with our teams, our families, providers, coordinators of community services, our partnering organizations, and in general, all of our stakeholders who are committed to serving and supporting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We want to continue to highlight and celebrate these stories. We will also share some information and updates regarding our fiscal year 2026 budget and dates of our budget hearings. We also will share updates on transitioning youth and eligibility determinations provided by Mr. Warren Waters Jr., who is the Director of the Office of Eligibility Services. We'll share information on our Waiver Advisory Council, including meeting dates, times, and registration links. And then we'll also provide updates on our support broker certification, children and family supports, employment, housing, mobile crisis, and Project STIR, which means steps towards independence and responsibility. We will also review frequently asked questions that were submitted to us prior to today's meeting, and we welcome you to ask us questions directly in our public comment period at the end of today's meeting. Next slide, please. We have so many great stories that we want to share today, and we want to continue doing a better job at sharing our success stories. Next slide. So first, let us introduce you to Candy Blessing of Washington County. We are excited to learn that this March, Candy will be participating in the 12th Special Olympics World Winter Games in Italy, commonly known as Torino 2025. Candy has participated in Special Olympics for many years, and her main events are snowshoeing and the long distance run. Candy has also served as a member of the Meritus Medical Center team as a dishwasher for 10 years, and she has become family. They are sponsoring several fundraisers to help with the cost of her trip to Italy. Candy is very excited and wants everyone to know what a huge support Jessica Stein from DDA's Western Regional Office as our advocacy specialist has done and has been to her. Please stay tuned because we want to be there when Candy wins. Next slide, please. Let us also introduce you to Matthew Clark. He has recently started his job with the support of a Lower Shore Enterprises job coach working alongside him. As you can see, Matthew works at 7-Eleven. He is stocking and organizing shelves and helps in the general cleaning and upkeep of the store. His ability to work well with others, his dedication, and positive attitude were some of the things that immediately stood out about him. Congratulations, Matthew. We celebrate you achieving the goal of getting your new job. Next slide, please. We also want to introduce you to John Henry. He likes to be called JP. His mom proudly shared just a sprinkling of one of his successes. John is an amazing photographer who actually uses his cell phone to take photos. He works with his mom to get the pictures stretched on canvas. He has been widely recognized on the Eastern Shore for his creative eye. He has 4 solo shows, and he has shown in numerous galleries, and his work is also being used in commercially print advertising, social media, television, and in tourism ads. JP is living his best life and has chosen to self-direct his services. He is currently the subject of an ongoing documentary film project, and in the short of it, it's on YouTube. It's called A Clear Lens. Everyone, we have a superstar in our midst. His mom, who shared his story, is not only one of his biggest cheerleaders, but she also serves as one of his support team members. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into your world, JP. Next slide, please. Thank you for all of you who shared your success stories. We have received several other amazing stories, and we will continue to share them at our community webinars as well as in our DDA Connection, which is our newsletter. We will also share these things publicly online by way of social media. Please keep your stories coming to us. We look forward to highlighting the achievements you've made in the communities of your choice. Now, I would like to turn it over to Antoine, who will give an update on DDA's programs area. Antoine?
Thanks for that warm welcome, Marlena. I just want to share that I'm excited to be a part of this team, and I look forward to meeting many of you and collaborating with you all very shortly. As our Deputy Secretary mentioned, we would like to provide you with some updates about the many initiatives happening at DDA, as well as our collaboration with our numerous partners. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Work continues on our dual diagnosis cohort project. For background, this project was designed to increase training and the implementation of best practices for supporting individuals with complex behavioral needs. We are very excited about this opportunity to provide quality trauma-informed care. So far, as of December 2024, 2 DDA providers, Seek and Optimal Health Group, have become fully accredited through the National Association of Dual Diagnosis. Additionally, on January 14, 2024, training was held for our first cohort of 8 providers in organization-wide positive behavior support training. There was great collaboration and thoughtful exchange of information between cohort members about how to improve the supports of this group of individuals we serve. As for next steps, applications for the request for application for the facilitator for cohort 2 is now currently out for bid. And once we have chosen a vendor, applications for cohort 2 participants will be announced. Next slide, please. Next, updates surrounding Children's and Family Services. We first like to take a moment and speak to you about our local care team process. Team members have been working closely with the State Coordinating Council and the Governor's Office of Children to explore the current local care team process and how it can be improved to better support families of children in Maryland. Stay tuned for further updates. One of the ways that we are increasing support to families is through our partnership with the Council on Quality Leadership, also known as CQL. Earlier, the Council on Quality Leadership presented the Strengthening Services, Supporting Families, and Improving Lives Across Maryland webinar to stakeholders. During the session, the Council on Quality Leadership provided an overview of its values, tools, philosophies, and strategies, as well as explained how collaboration with the DDA, our service providers, individuals receiving support, along with their family and other stakeholders, leads to meaningful and positive changes in people's lives. Additionally, updates were shared on the state's progress toward achieving Council on Quality Leadership Network accreditation and what this means for you. Further webinars will be announced in upcoming editions of the DDA Connection. Next slide, please. DDA continues to make independent housing a priority for our participants. The DDA has several housing initiatives funded through the Money Follows the Person program, and today we'd like to share updates on 3 of those. The first is our Housing Clearinghouse. Maryland Inclusive Housing manages a clearinghouse along with housing resources and a housing consultant that provides regular updates on housing and urban development, as well as affordable housing information. This is maintained on their website at mih-inc.org, and this website is kept up to date for public reference. Maryland Inclusive Housing also has developed 5 housing committees that meet quarterly. These committees consist of service providers, nonprofit organizations, disability rights advocates, contractors, realtors, and local council people. They are located in the following 5 counties: Howard County, Baltimore City, Montgomery County, Eastern Shore, and Prince George's County. The Maryland Inclusive Housing is currently searching for people and agencies in the western region of Maryland for this year. Lastly, we are very happy about our rental subsidy program progress. The rental subsidy program is administered by the Department of Housing and Community Development, and we're happy to share that in this last quarter, 8 additional people, for a total of 14 people, were housed utilizing this program. Next slide, please. Our clinical services team continues to work with our partners to improve access to mental health resources for persons with developmental disabilities. Two we want to spotlight today are 988 and our Maryland Mobile Crisis. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a support helpline for people experiencing mental health or substance use emergencies. People can either call, text, or chat 988 to talk and to connect with services. Additionally, Maryland Mobile Crisis is a group of behavioral health teams across the state. They can respond in person as needed during a crisis. Anyone in Maryland can use this service, which includes people who get DDA services. Currently, there are licensed mobile crisis providers in 14 jurisdictions, which means that there are crisis providers trained to work with individuals with individual intellectual and developmental disabilities, and our capacity continues to build for this service. Also, the Behavioral Health Administration and DDA are partnering with the National Association of Developmental Disabilities Directors to work with the Behavioral Health Administration's training vendor to develop training that is specific to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So as you can see, our programs team is hard at work with many exciting initiatives, and we will be sharing further updates throughout the year. At this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Rhonda Workman, DDA's Director of Federal Programs, for some federal program updates. Rhonda?
Thank you, Antoine, and happy day to everybody. Another one of the Money Follows the Person's initiative for the DDA is Project STIR. STIR stands for Steps Towards Independence and Responsibility. Project STIR is a hands-on training for and by people with disabilities that is designed to provide the tools to be a good self-advocate, connect with others in advocacy, and gain leadership skills and experience. Training is provided by people on the go through a contract that the DDA has with the Kennedy Krieger Institute. During the last quarter, 40 individuals completed the 3-day Project STIR training series, which was conducted in Westminster, Maryland. Next slide, please. This slide relates to the support broker certification. Individuals interested in becoming a support broker can register for the support broker training using the link on this slide. The on-demand support broker training continues to be available to anyone who desires to become certified as a support broker. As of this month, we have almost 400 people certified as support brokers. Their contact information is available on the DDA website public listing of certified support brokers. We've also included a link on this webpage for you. Next slide, please. This slide includes the dates and times for the DDA Waiver Advisory Council. The DDA Waiver Advisory Council provides input on the DDA-operated Medicaid waiver program system design, service delivery and access to services, federal waiver assurances, ensuring the access to Medicaid services, known also as the access rule, and quality enhancement efforts and improvement strategies. Meetings are open to the public and include both in-person and virtual options. And this slide includes a link to register. You only need to complete the registration form once to be registered for all the meetings. Now I'm going to turn it over to Robert White to review the governor's budget.
Thank you, Rhonda, and good morning, everyone. The Moore-Miller administration's FY 2026 budget for DDA contains record investments that will help with getting those who need DDA services the ability to do so. The governor's allowance includes $1.3 billion in state general funds for the DDA. That equates to about just a little over $2.6 billion in total funds. This is a $500 million investment over what we received in FY 2023. Due to budget constraints, the DDA must also make adjustments to ensure the service delivery system's funding is outcome-driven and sustainable with the goal of making changes that will position people in a more sustainable model while minimizing disruption to the lives of Marylanders with developmental disabilities, as well as their loved ones, our community services providers, and the community at large. Next slide, please. Due to budget challenges, the DDA must also make adjustments to ensure the service delivery system's funding is outcome-driven and sustainable, with the goal of making changes that will position people in a more sustainable model while minimizing, as I mentioned before, disruptions. Some of our cost containment strategies include analyzing state-funded services to ensure that we are maximizing the federal fund participation program, using the waiting list equity fund to fund DDA services, elimination of the geographical differential that are paid to providers in certain counties, revising our policy as it relates to dedicated hour utilization, elimination of the low intensity support services program, introduction of a new methodology for how the reasonable and customary rates are selected in the STS program, termination of the wage exceptions process as part of the STS program, and reinstatement of the cap on individual and family-directed goods and services. Now, I would like to turn it over to Marlena. Sorry, next slide. I realize I still have one slide remaining, so my apologies. I just wanted to highlight the DDA budget hearings for the FY 2026 budget. The House budget hearing is on February 19th. The Senate budget hearing is on February 20th, and we hope that you all are able to tune in and participate in that process. Now I would like to turn it over to Mr. Warren Waters, from the Director of Eligibility, to give an update on transitioning youth and where we are as it pertains to eligibility determination. Warren?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, DDA colleagues. As Robert mentioned, my name is Warren Waters Jr., and I'm the Director of the Office of Medicaid Eligibility Services. Before you here, you see the updates for the transitioning youth for the fiscal year of 2025. Overall, there are 829 transitioning youth invited to apply. We've approved 559 so far for the financial eligibility components of the Medicaid waiver programs, and are working very closely with our DDA colleagues and DHS colleagues to move forward with the remaining transitioning youth. Next slide. On this list here, you see the count for the remaining FY24 transitioning youth, with a small update. Noted on this list, there's a grand total of 63. However, as of today, there's 57, as we have been able to approve, just as of yesterday, an additional 6 transitioning youth from this list. We're working very closely with our DDA colleagues to track these remaining open cases and update them manually, as we do not want to rely on our systems for any impacts and ensure that we do not miss any stones unturned. We're working with the Department of Human Services for the state review team, which processes the eligibility determinations as far as disability notification, to schedule those appointments. And I just want to note that we've heard concerns about that and that process, and we're working very closely with those colleagues, not only to increase the awareness of that program and the process, but also the communication that comes out from there. I'm also working to allow additional time for those appointments for accessibility and timeliness of those appointments. In the eligibility determination division, We're working to increase customer service and developing a problem resolution unit specifically for our waiver programs to ensure that there is a timely response and execution of those cases. And we're working on collaboration with our DDA colleagues for training for the CCS and developing standard operating procedures for our eligibility determinations.
Thank you, Warren. So what's next? Next slide, please. Just want to make certain that everybody knows that the DDA Connection is a great way to stay informed. On a monthly basis, our newsletter goes out to all participants, family members, providers, coordinators of community services, partnering organizations, and our stakeholders at large. We want to work very hard to keep you informed by sharing important updates that are relevant to you, events, and more. If you are not already receiving these newsletters, please click the link here. We will make certain that that link gets out to you, and we will get you subscribed or sign you up. For example, in the last month's connection, we mentioned the restart of the Employment First Committee, in which we review and develop strategies and resources to support competitive integrated employment. We received a lot of positive feedback about that. So we will continue to keep you abreast of what's next. Also, next slide, please. Also want to share the next series of rate review advisory group meetings. This is our calendar year 2025 meeting schedule. Our next meeting is Thursday, February 6th from 12:30 to 1:45 p.m. All of the times are the same, and as you can see, the one after that is Thursday, March 6th, Thursday, April 10th, Thursday, May 29th, Thursday, July 10th, and August 21st. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda to talk about our regional meetings. Next slide, please.
Yeah, this slide includes the date of the 2025 regional provider meetings and registration links for each regional meeting. These meetings are for DDA licensed and DDA certified providers that work within the specific region. This link includes a slide to register. Similar to the Waiver Advisory Council, you only need to click the link and register once to be invited to all the meetings. Next slide, please.
Now we would like to take this opportunity to share some of the questions that we received in advance of today's meeting. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Elizabeth so that we can share those questions and provide our feedback before opening mics for public comment. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Marlena. We will now begin our question and answer session of today's webinar. We will start with questions received before today's meeting. We will respond to as many questions as possible received during the meeting after that. And finally, as Marlena mentioned, we will have a public comment section. Please note, in order to participate in the public comment section of today's webinar, please enter your name in the question box, and we will call on individuals who enter their name in the question box in order. So the first question that came through ahead of today's meeting is, what should I do to ensure that my IFDGS request is approved in time for me to be able to register for classes in the community that fill up quickly? I'll turn it over to Antoine, our Director of Programs, to answer this question.
Thanks for that question. Please submit all individual and family-directed goods and services requests with enough time to give the regional office 20 business days to review the request. Also, please make sure that the request has all of the required documentation uploaded in the form to avoid clarification requests.
Thank you, Antoine. Our next question I will turn over to our Director of Federal Programs, Rhonda. And the question is, why can't I access a day-to-day administrator funding and IFDGS funding when my plan is an auto extend pending approval? Rhonda, would you like to answer this one?
Thank you, Elizabeth. When a person-centered plan is in auto extend, the services that were approved for the previous year are authorized. Individual and family directed goods and services, including day-to-day administrative services, is paid through additional funding above and beyond funding for the authorized services, which can only be accessed when a participant has approved an active person-centered plan of their current plan year.
Thank you, Rhonda. Our next question, how is DDA communicating with and partnering with the community related to self-directed services? Antoine, I'll hand this one over to you.
DDA communicates and partners with the community related to self-directed services in several ways, including but not limited to its community webinar, our waiver advisory council, our DDA connection newsletter, topic-specific communications and trainings, our self-directed services informational sessions, meetings with the Self-Directed Advocacy Network of Maryland, also known as SDAN, meetings with the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Coalition, meetings and technical assistance with coordinators of community services, as well as our self-directed training series.
Thank you. Will the DDA bring on additional FMCS providers beyond the current 3 providers? I'll turn this question over to Wesley Huntsman, our Director of Administrative Services. Wes?
Thank you, Elizabeth. The department will issue a request for proposals for fiscal management services in the future to procure providers.
Thank you. And our next question, what does funding available through other sources mean for IFDGS? Rhonda, I'll turn this one over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Funding for goods and services may be available through community grants, health insurance, or other governmental agencies. For example, the DDA cannot approve individual and family directed goods and service requests for dental care that health insurance would cover.
Thank you, Rhonda. Switching gears to another range of questions. The first question is, have all providers transitioned to LTSS Maryland? And Antoine, I'll hand this one back over to you.
Yes, all providers transitioned on or before September 2024.
The next question, what can the DDA do to support older individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who do not have school and medical records to support their eligibility? Rhonda?
Thank you, Elizabeth. The DDA works with the applicant and their authorized representatives to gather available supporting documentation and information. We have accepted statements from individuals who have known the person their whole life that can explain how the individual functioned at each stage during their life and the supports that were provided to them. Examples include, but not limited to, statements from the person's pastor, long-term neighbors, and family doctors.
Thank you. We received 2 questions related to the cost containment strategies in the governor's proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. First, why does the governor's proposed budget recommend eliminating the geographical differential rate? And second, when will the policy change related to dedicated hours take place? And how will we be able to prove how we are staffing CLGH week to week? I will hand this question over to our Chief Operating Officer, Robert White.
Thank you, Elizabeth. The governor's proposed budget is designed to continue investments in and promote the sustainability of DDA's service delivery system. The DDA is working with its state and community partners to schedule informational sessions to discuss the implementation of the various cost containment strategies.
Thank you, Robert. Our next question, can a participant switch from the CSW to the CPW waiver without submitting a new PCP? Rhonda, I'll let you answer this one.
Thank you, Elizabeth. No, a person cannot switch from the Community Supports waiver to the Community Pathways waiver without submitting a new person-centered plan. A Community Pathways waiver person-centered plan will need to be submitted.
Thank you. Next, how does the DDA ensure consistency between PCP reviewers? Antoine?
The regional office staff reviews plans from a person-centered perspective. To ensure consistency, reviewers compare the information in the plan and the requested services to 1, our waiver definitions and rules, 2, our DDA policy, and 3, our guidelines to services, authorization, and provider billing manual. The information contained in these tools are also reflected in the person-centered plan review checklist.
Thank you, Antoine. And our last question that was submitted in advance, how is the DDA ensuring that waiver eligibility decisions are being made in a timely manner and avoiding gaps in services? Rhonda?
Thank you, Elizabeth. The DDA works closely with its Medicaid partners in the Department Office of Eligibility Services as part of the waiver eligibility and enrollment process. When delays are identified, DDA notifies Medicaid and works with Medicaid to resolve the issues.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions as well as to those who answered. I will now turn it over to our Chief of Staff, Will Payne, who will be handling the next round of questions and answers. Will?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Elizabeth. We will now be able to briefly respond to some of the questions received during today's session. We do want to make sure that we leave time for public comment at the end of today's session, so we will not be able to respond to every question received. I'll be referring each question as I read it to members of our leadership team who can respond. Before doing so, I just want to remind everyone that to participate in the public comment section, please enter your name in the question box and we will call on you in order of appearance. And second, I'd like to quickly respond to 3 technical questions received during the call today. First, the question, where can we access the handout with the hyperlinks for today's session? This will be posted immediately after today's session on the DDA Community Meetings page of the DDA website. Second, where can we access details for the Waiver Advisory Council? Future meeting details will be posted soon on the Waiver Advisory Council page of the DDA website. And finally, where can we watch DDA budget hearings? To do that, please visit the Maryland General Assembly website, mgaleg.maryland.gov, and visit the Meetings tab of that website. With those items out of the way, I'll turn it over to questions for our leadership team. First of all, is there a path for OHCQ to use the guidance documents DDA puts out in policy stat rather than COMAR requirements?
Is there a path? Will, would you mind repeating that question, please?
Sure. So the question is there a path for OHCQ to use DDA's guidance documents in policy stat rather than using COMAR?
So OHCQ must use the existing governing documents that the DDA has. If providers are experiencing challenges with our governing documents and the implementation of them by one of our sister agencies, I encourage them to reach out to us and we can talk through any challenges with the community providers.
Okay, thank you, Marlena. The next question received is, if a personal support staff in self-directed services is making the top hourly reasonable and customary rate for their county, can they work overtime when time and a half goes over the reasonable and customary rate?
Thank you, Will, for sharing that. If a personal support person who's making the top reasonable customary rate works overtime, yes, they can in an emergency situation go above that as required by law. Please note, if the personal support staff is a family member, the family of staff form overtime must be approved by the DDA using the family as overtime request form.
Okay, thank you very much, Rhonda. The next question I can also respond to. We received a question, how can one submit someone to be featured on success stories? To be featured on success stories, please send your photos and stories to Dr. Yamanja Smalls at yamanja.smalls@maryland.gov with the subject line, My Success. There's also a consent form available in the slides for today's presentation that will also allow us to feature your story or pictures if signed. The next question that we received is, I've seen an email that the governor recently called for a $200 million reduction in funding for the DDA. What does that mean and what services does it involve?
So the Moore-Miller administration continues to make investments in the DDA at record levels. And within within his proposed budget, he's actually proposing $1.3 billion in state funding. Again, as Mr. White said earlier, this is a record investment compared to what we've received in the past. So the governor's proposed budget will continue to invest in some of the things that we've had in place for some time, including new enrollments. It does also include moderate provider rate increases and investments into our electronic health record system. You all know it as LTSS Maryland. However, by way of making these record investments, we must also ensure that the DDA service delivery system is outcome driven and sustainable. And as you heard earlier from Mr. White, we have some proposed strategies in place that will help us do just that. And so we are leveraging opportunities to look at our state funded services, leveraging an opportunity to access the waitlist equity fund, to terminate the geographical differential rates, as well as revise our dedicated hour utilization policy, suspend the low intensity support services program, and then also make some revisions to the service delivery model known as self-direction, where there are going to be revisions to the reasonable and customary wage standards, terminating or ending the wage exception process, and then restoring the cap on individual and family-directed goods and services.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Hutchinson. The next two questions involve updates in the programs section of the presentation. The first of which is, can you expand a little bit more on what updates are being discussed related to the local care team process?
So our team is currently working in partnership with the office, the Governor's Office of Children's Services, to look at what we can do to make that process more seamless and at what we can do to really collaborate with parents and family members on that service.
Thank you, Antoine. The next question related to the program section of the presentation is the housing subsidy program currently open or on hold?
The housing subsidy program is currently open.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is related to self-direction. Can a support broker be a CCS and a support broker at the same time?
Bill, thank you for sharing that information. No, a support broker cannot be a coordinator of community services and a support broker at the same time. Per our regulations for targeted case management, COMAR 100948, there must be a conflict free, and so the case manager cannot provide other services.
Thank you, Rhonda. Our next question is related to the proposed cost containment strategy. How will the DDA implement this strategy? Are waiver amendments required? And what measures will be taken to ensure equity between community provider services and self-directed services?
The DDA will be scheduling some informational sessions and working sessions with all community partners within the next week. We are asking for everyone to please look out for our communications by way of our DD connection. We will have our community partners at the table to talk through those cost containment strategies and a path to implementation.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Hutchinson. The next question is also related to the cost containment strategies, asking what time frame will state-only funded people have to be enrolled in the waiver? And if someone is currently receiving state-only funding and do not end up being eligible for the waiver, will they be removed from services?
These conversations will happen at those community sessions where we have more information to share with everyone.
Thank you. Our next question is how much funding is available in the fiscal 2026 budget for emergencies and crisis situations, and how many people does DDA expect to help in emergencies or crisis situations?
The current waiver program within its existing authority has reserved capacity for individuals who are in emergency situations. We anticipate a few dozen emergency situations based on past data. And so just want to assure everyone the emergency situations, that is one of the areas of the governor's priority to continue investing in, to make certain that those individuals who are in an emergency situation can be safely maintained in our community.
Thank you. Our next question is related to the new methodology for reasonable and customary rates. Particularly, does it only affect wages in the SDS model, or does it also affect wages for traditional providers?
Thank you. Will, this is Robert. So the new methodology is the same methodology that is used to determine the rates for community services providers.
Thank you, Robert. The next question is, in the Senate Tax and Budget hearing, Deputy Secretary Hutchinson mentioned a glide path for the elimination of geographic differential rates. What will that glide path look like?
Again, these strategies will be talked in more detail at our upcoming community partner meetings. Please stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. This is the last question we'll be able to get to in this section, as we'll need to move on to the public comment. The question is who to contact if there are issues with EDD determinations.
Mr. Waters, would you mind answering that question on behalf of your team, please?
Absolutely. So currently we're working to develop a problem resolution unit where you can direct those specific concerns and questions for EDD. We're working very closely with our DDA colleagues to develop an escalation path. So as of right now, continue to contact your EDD case manager as we're working to increase customer service and responsiveness on the team. If there is no response from that team member, then we will obviously indicate for you all what that path will look like for escalations. But I'm also very open to receiving comments, and we'll work closely with the EDD team to remediate those issues.
Thank you, Warren. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Smalls to enter the public comment section.
Right. As mentioned at the start of the meeting, this section of the meeting is for public comment. To ensure confidentiality, if you have a question specific to an application, eligibility, or services, please contact the DDA regional office directly. Please remember, all comments and questions from the public members must be appropriate to the topic, respectful, and civil. Your mic will be turned on and you will be able to unmute your mic and introduce yourselves. You will then have 2 minutes to introduce and share your comment.
Thank you, Dr. Smalls. I can go through the names if that is helpful.
Thanks, Will.
Okay. The first person who submitted their name is Terrence Nefru. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name, but we will assign you to be able to unmute.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was just wondering where I can get educational material on LTSS.
Thank you very much, Terrence. Would one of our leadership team like to respond?
Yes, please send an email to robert.white, the
Okay.
number 2 at maryland.com, and I will connect you to a member of our team.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And just for quick correction, that's robert.white, the number 2 at maryland.gov.
Okay. At maryland.gov. Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Terrence. The next person who submitted their name is Alicia Wopat. Alicia, we will go ahead and send you unmute permissions.
Thank you. I, along with all of the people who self-direct, are very concerned about the impact to people when you reduce the wages. It will most certainly be a tremendous loss of almost all of our DSPs. And so my question, I guess, is what are you going to do about the people who will have no service? If you've done an impact analysis, I would certainly love to see it. My concern is, what is the state's plan for the people? Are you returning to state provided care, or I don't know how you are going to have the people who self-direct served if you decimate the DSP population with a severe reduction in wages that you are proposing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wopat, and thank you so much for providing that feedback. As I mentioned in our monthly meeting yesterday, we will be having targeted community meetings to speak with everyone involved in this process to work through the strategies. Again, I encourage you to come to the table with your feedback as you shared yesterday and are sharing today, and we will talk through those strategies with you all. Definitely need you at the table as a partner, so we really appreciate your feedback.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. The next person who submitted their name is Daniel Lukenbach.
Hi, good afternoon. I wanted to know if the budget for the DDA DHCD rent subsidy is changing at all in Governor Moore's proposed budget.
That is a great question. So the funding available to us in FY26 is at the same levels as they were for FY25 for DDA administered grants, subsidies to the Maryland Inclusive Housing, including the rental subsidy program.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Robert. The next person who submitted their name is Kenny Aiken.
Well, we don't hear anything, so we may want to ping the person again or move on to the next as we have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, I was waiting for the permissions to be unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but now I am. Thank you guys. So a quick question. I was just wondering, so even though I'm aligned to a particular regional office, which is Western, is it okay, I mean, to attend the upcoming meetings? 'Cause I believe I saw a slide with the different registration links. And how do we register for those hour meetings, if possible?
Are you talking about the regional provider meetings?
Yes.
Yeah, so we will make certain that the regional office connects with you. Yes, it's always welcome to attend our regional provider meetings. For the most part, all of the regions are hearing the same updates and information. And then there is a segment specifically for the region because, as you know, there are slight variances across regions. So you're always welcome to participate in anything that the DDA offers, and then please remain connected with your regional office for those things that are in your specific area. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you. And then lastly, how do we let the CCSs know that we're seeking new individuals, especially for the transitional youths that would be needing services? What's the best way to connect with them?
So, as you know, this is a person-centered planning process. And so the individuals who are applying for or who are in services, they get to make those choices. The coordinators for community services actually work directly with the participants and the applicants, and they make those selections. So it's very important for your agency to be a part of our provider network, but most importantly, this is a person-centered planning process, and the individuals in services are the ones who would make those selections. Thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
Okay, we are coming to the end of our time. Let's try to fit in one more question, though. The next person who submitted their name is Scott Thigpen.
Hello, thank you for taking my question. I was wondering if and where DDA is going to post the analysis and the methodology they used to determine the fair and reasonable wages for the staff. That would be extremely helpful for those of us in self-directed services to figure out on what basis those determinations were made.
As I mentioned earlier, not certain if you heard, we will have additional information at those targeted community meetings. So please stay tuned. We would love to have you at the table with us.
And I guess just to be the question, is there going to be a physical document that outlines that provided at those meetings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Scott. And I'll turn it back over to Deputy Secretary Hutchinson to close our meeting today.
Thank you, Will. And I just want to thank everyone again for joining us this afternoon, also for sharing those success stories, and also for sharing feedback in advance of this meeting so that we could share what's on your minds and the questions that you have with the community at large. We would love to end this meeting with another success story. And so we want to introduce to you Janine Sturgis, a young woman who is supported by the ARC Southern Maryland. Janine won 5th place in the Special Olympics bowling tournament. And also we have Liam Aaron, who is working hard at Belushi's as a work volunteer in its training program. So again, as we said earlier, these are the amazing stories that we have. This is one of the main reasons why we're here, to celebrate our individuals who are living their lives in the communities in which they choose. We want to hear more of these success stories. So please, please, please reach out to us and share those stories. This definitely represents our why. As we adjourn, please be on the lookout for communications from my office in regard to those community meetings that are coming up to discuss the cost containment strategies that are in place, and also additional opportunities to engage with us related to provider services, self-directed services, and also overall highlights from the department. Thank you all again for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.